Hey guys, welcome back to Clownfish TV. This is Kneon. We're going to talk about the comic book industry. I guess this is our daily dose of dismal comics industry news. I'm going to start out talking about Marvel Comics furloughs. I just love that term furlough. I never really heard the term furlough like I've heard it during the pandemic. They're laying people off temporarily. I don't think some people are going to come back. Of course, Marvel is owned by Disney. We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about some other stuff going on in the comic book industry, including a push for digital. We're going to talk about comic book shops trying to find ways to survive. We're going to talk about what creators can do to survive the pandemic. The comic book industry purge, I think, is what this is. And again, I'm not taking delight in it. We know a lot of people that work in comics. I myself worked in comics for a number of years. A lot of people are going to be affected. A lot of people are going to lose their jobs. There are some a-holes who are going to lose their jobs, but there are also some very, very good people who I've known for a long time that are looking at a void at this point because we don't know where the comic book industry is going to go. So I'm going to start with the Marvel layoffs. Just rip that Band-Aid off, right? Now this is coming from Bleeding Cool. And again, Rich Johnston is actually doing journalism now. He has been for the last couple of weeks. So it's amazing how a crisis like this can actually light a fire under some people's asses to stop throwing mud and start reporting news. However, you know, I'm sure there's going to be lots of mudslinging. I think as this thing goes on, and we're already seeing some pros crack on Twitter. I mean, there have been pros cracking on Twitter for quite a while, but we're seeing it starting to get to people. And I think as more and more jobs dry up, as it becomes clearer that the comic book industry is not going to look the same on the other side, as it becomes clearer that some people are going to survive this or even thrive during this time, and other people are not going to have a job anymore and they're going to have to find something else or find another way to do comics, there's going to be a massive amount of vitriol thrown at people. I guarantee you there's going to be all kinds of drama. So before we get into it anymore, please subscribe for more pop culture news, views, and rants here on Clownfish TV. We're over 100,000 subs, guys. We're working on something special for our play button unboxing, so that'll be coming hopefully this week. We got some cool stuff lined up. So we're going to give a quick shout out to the sponsor of this video, and then we'll be right back. Thinking about printing your own comic books, graphic novel, or manga? We recommend our friends over at PrintNinja. We've been using PrintNinja as long as they've been printing comics, and both the quality and price is excellent. Mention Clownfish TV and get an additional 5% overrun of your book order quantity printed for free. That's free books, people. Just mention this offer on the phone or in the additional information box on the quote request form. That's printninja.com, or click on the link in the description below. Anyway, Marvel Comics furloughs staff this weekend. This is coming from Rich Johnston. Disney has furloughed staff across divisions, even with criticism from the Disney family. Yeah, Abigail Disney not happy about Disney laying off its employees while the executives get their portion of a $1.5 billion dividend payout. A lot of people saying, hey, that $1.5 billion would pay staff for a couple of months. But that's not how the game's played. That's not how the game is played. But it is sad, given that Disney always goes on about how family friendly they are and how progressive they are, that they folded so quickly. Other companies were able to keep their people on longer, on salary longer. Disney, the first chance they got, seemingly they laid off like 100,000 people. There's actually more people than that, as I understand it. I know Marvel Studios has had layoffs. Disney PR has had layoffs. Multiple divisions in Disney has had layoffs. And now Marvel. It's not just pencils down for freelancers, but also for comic book editors, comic book staff. And I'm gonna be honest, Disney, in the financial condition that they're in right now, I don't know if some of these people are coming back. I think Disney is going to take the opportunity to take inventory of its staff levels and its different divisions and adjust accordingly. That means cutbacks, permanent cutbacks. I think they're hemorrhaging money. They're losing $38 million a day just on the theme parks. That's not including the movies, and now the comic book industry is kind of ground to a halt too, but this was always a very, very small part of Disney's empire. So this is what they're telling Bleeding Cool. The affected staff have been furloughed rather than laid off. I'm sorry, it's semantics. It's the same thing. We used to call it a temporary layoff. Here in Western PA, it was called a temporary layoff. Now they say furlough because it sounds better. It's technically the same thing. They'll pay your health insurance, but you're no longer getting a paycheck. You can't eat health insurance, right? Marvel's continuing to provide health insurance for the duration, and it's intended that they would return to work. I don't know if that's going to happen. Bleeding Cool understands the furloughing affects senior as well as junior staff. Goodbye, editors. The furlough period for Disney staff as a whole began on April 19th, but for Marvel Comics, it begins on Sunday, April 26th, though for the most practical office purposes, that means the end of play today, which would have been Friday. So yeah, you know, I don't think it's good. Marvel, unlike DC Comics, Marvel has not chosen to announce any alternative distribution plans. I'm gonna speculate as to why. Instead, like Image, Dark Horse, IDW, Boom, Dynamite, more, they're waiting for Diamond to begin distributing to comic shops to be able to receive them again in a limited fashion from mid-May on. Everybody's throwing shade at DC Comics for getting comic books out there when everybody else is in solidarity not getting comics out there. Here, DC Comics is fighting for its life. DC Comics has to get stuff out there. They have to generate revenue, or Warner Media is probably going to shut them down. The thing is I think Disney is eyeing Marvel for the same thing. Marvel is Disney owned. They don't give a shit about comic book shops. They really don't. They're probably going to look at this like, well, if it's not making money and we got to get, make up some of that lost revenue from the theme parks and the movies, it's a very, very easy cut. Let's just let one of these other comic book publishers, IDW or Dark Horse or somebody, snap up the licenses for the superheroes. We cut all these people loose, and they take all the risk. They pay us to publish our Marvel characters. And I think they were playing around with IDW, but IDW is not in the best of financial shape either. I don't know if IDW is going to make it through this, to tell you the truth. But don't misread what's going on here. This has nothing to do with them being good guy Greg. This has nothing to do with them being like, yeah, we're going to stand in solidarity with these 2,000 comic book shops. They don't give a shit. Look at Disney doesn't care. They don't care. They're going to look at the bottom line, and cuts are going to be made, and I think they're going to be permanent. Donny Cates defends Marvel's decision to halt comics during the Diamond shutdown. This is what he said on Twitter, because, this is all anybody ever talks on Twitter anymore. That's all these comic book people do, is talking on Twitter. However, I will give him props. I will give him props for paying off people's pull lists. We'll talk a little bit about that and the right and wrong way to react to this situation, I guess. It's complicated. In a nutshell, if we put comics out digitally, and we're going to talk about digital comics, it hurts comic shops even more, which in turn hurts you guys. Kate's tweeted, believe me, no one wants to sell Marvel comics more than Marvel, and we're doing our best. Disney wants to save money. This isn't a show of solidarity. They don't care. They literally do not care. There's a lot behind the scenes, yes, that you guys don't know about, but I promise this is the right move for now. I know it sucks for the moment, but that's just it. A moment, it will pass. I promise. In the meantime, go buy some comics. So Marvel Comics, for their part, have not publicly declared a position on the controversial topic of publishing digital comics during the shutdown. Actually, they have. Marvel confirms no new releases next week, print or digital. Coming from Newsarama, a Marvel Comics spokesperson has confirmed the company will continue its hiatus from new comics releases with no new releases in print or digital for the week of April 27th, because they're going to bank all the material. Disney's just looking at the money. They're going to bank all the material and release all the stuff after this is over, and they're not going to pay people to create new stuff. I'm telling you guys, Marvel and DC might not make it through this, and it's because their corporate overlords are hurting because they don't have that Hollywood money, that theme park money. This is the 5th consecutive week the New York-based publisher has not released new comic books. 6 for those who buy the comics from UK retailers. Diamond is shut down. We're going to talk about that. Diamond is throwing shade at DC Comics because DC Comics is going through 2 other publishers. Both of them are like online comic retailer mega stores. And because of that, Diamond is punishing them, which they bring this up on Newsarama. Next week, DC will begin using the new direct market distributors Lunar and UCS to deliver new comic books for participating comic book shops. They're actually Midtown and DCBS, I think that's who's actually running it. To date, no other comic book publisher have announced their intention to begin using the new service. If Diamond doesn't come back online, you're not going to have much of a choice, or you're going to have to sell directly. So Boom Studios put a video out yesterday. A lot of people tagged me on this from Philip Sablik, who was talking about comic shops and community and coming back and all of that. Your comic customers are coming back because you sell community. Community is what makes comic book stores special. I do agree. I do agree. However, you need money to keep the lights on, and I don't know if a lot of these stores are going to be able to keep the lights on, including a big one, Forbidden Planet. I was very surprised. Forbidden Planet has a GoFundMe. Forbidden Planet is a pretty sizable comic shop. I actually have a soft spot for Forbidden Planet because they took a chance on our indie book about 10 years ago when nobody else would. So it would be very, very sad for me personally to see Forbidden Planet disappear. They've got a GoFundMe set up, and I mean, $300,000 they need. It's been up for like a week. They've only got 37,000, so they need like 10 times this. This is what's frustrating about this. Again, I said this before, and I'm not happy about it. I'm not dancing on the grave of comics at all. And in fact, I have a soft spot for Forbidden Planet in particular. But here's the reality of the situation. They're in New York. They have multiple locations. The rent's very, very high. And, $300,000 is a lot of money. A lot of money to ask for. Basically, Forbidden Planet is asking for as much money as they're giving to the Bink Foundation. However, I would prefer to give to a GoFundMe over Bink because at least I know they're getting the money. Bink, I don't know where the freaking money is going. It's apparently the shops are only getting like 40% of it. The problem is what happens after this. There's a lot of charity, there's a lot, but is the comic book industry after this going to be sustainable? Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what it's going to look like after this. Are we going to have as many publishers? I don't know what the comic book industry is going to look like after this. So Diamond is being petty little bitches. So they're taking the 3 Jokers out of the gem listing in the catalog. They had apparently in April 2020 catalog, they had 3 Jokers in here, and now they're taking it out. They're taking it out because they're pissed off at DC Comics. I'm actually looking forward to this. I dipped out of Batman years ago, but I'm really interested in the 3 Jokers storyline because that's something they've been teasing for a while, but they're not going to highlight it. It's because they're being petty bitches because DC Comics broke rank. But again, you have to understand where DC Comics is coming from. They're coming from a position of, oh my God, we have to bring in money or Warner Media is going to cut us loose. And they absolutely are. Warner Media missed their revenue goals this quarter. They have a new CEO who is a bean counter. He is going to cut them mercilessly, and he's going to cut everything in Warner Media that doesn't make money. And he's already said there are no sacred cows. Warner Media said there's no sacred cows. That could mean DC Comics is a comic book publisher. So now DC Comics is releasing digital comics daily. So we're going to talk about digital comics, and everybody keeps looking at digital comics as saving the comic book industry, but right now it makes up a very small portion of comic book sales. DC's Digital First program is set to expand its slate of comic books with a variety of titles released digitally 7 days a week. Sounds like webcomics. It does. The first wave of titles will be The Man of Tomorrow, Batman Gotham Knights, Wonder Woman, Agent of Peace, Aquaman Deep Dives. Sounds like kind of dirty. Flash, Fastest Man Alive, Swamp Thing, New Roots, and DC Superhero Girls Infinite Frenemies, each debuting online for the first time, having previously been exclusive to DC Giant Anthologies. So they're taking the Walmart comics and they're putting them online. That's pretty smart. I mean, look, you've already paid for the material. Why not reuse it? So again, DC Comics is finding a way to get comics to people, whether it's through, Midtown distributing their books or they're doing it digitally, and it's pissing other people off. The smaller companies aren't really equipped to do it. Again, understand where DC Comics is coming from. Don't misunderstand what's going on at Marvel, because Disney doesn't give a shit. I think they're just like, yeah, this business division, it doesn't perform. We outsource all of our video games and our t-shirts and we just do it with comics too. So we're going to talk a little bit about digital. So Engadget put this article out a couple weeks ago saying the comic industry would rather grind to a halt than go digital, because they're talking about that Comic Hub thing, which was a complete brain fart. There was no logistics. I don't even understand what we were doing. It was basically like, go to a record store and buy an MP3 and put it on your phone, and when the vinyl comes in 6 months, go back to the record store and get the vinyl. Like, I don't even understand how this is supposed to work. You know, and nobody else did either. And it was a pain in the ass, and Comic Hub literally lasted like a day before it got GTFO'd by retailers and industry pundits other than Rich Johnston. And people were like, it just doesn't make sense. It's too damn complicated. But Engadget was like, comics would rather die than go digital. It's not gonna, I don't understand, because it doesn't make a lot of money. Again, everybody's talking digital comics. This was put out in Screen Rant a couple days ago. You know, comic shops are closed. Digital comics looked like they could fill the gap, but just how much of comic sales come from digital versions? Not very many. In 2018, comic industry resource Comicron estimated digital comic book sales in North America garnered 100 million, with overall sales rising approximately 4%. In 2019. We're talking 10 years of digital comics. By comparison, comic book stores raked in 510 million in 2018. Booksellers funneled in an additional $465 million. While digital comic book sales are rising, they are clearly dwarfed by their print counterparts. Interestingly enough, digital comic book sales exceed print sales in Japan. This is interesting. Digital comic book sales exceed print sales in Japan. Are they counting the Viz Media, the Shonen Jump? Because I subscribe to that. I love it. I do. I mean, I'm normally not one for digital comics, but I love the Shonen Jump app. It's $1.99 a month, and it's like unlimited manga. Because a lot of stuff, I mean, as much as I like to have physical copies, manga is not something that, you know, because I think it's because there's so much of it. It's like, I'm going to read it once, I'm going to move on to something else. You know, it's not something I'm going to go back and reread. So for me to read it digitally and be like, yeah, there's like 300 chapters of freaking Dragon Ball in here I can read, it works out pretty well. So that's really interesting to read that digital comic sales in Japan are higher than print sales, and the print sales are very high in Japan compared to America. Like, Japan just loves comics. They love manga way more than we love comics over here. Japan likes comics, loves comics, and is willing to pay for comics more than we are here in the States. While informative, these numbers do come with a few caveats. The sales for digital comics obviously excludes subscription services, which gives subscribers access to multiple comics in a package similar to streaming. It doesn't take into account how many comics were sold at discount through Comixology. Yeah, I got all of Infinity Gauntlet for like 99 cents. On Comixology. It's crazy. And we have Comixology Unlimited too. But it's Comixology Unlimited is like Costco. They give you a sample. They give you like the first issue, and sometimes you'll get like back issue. You'll get older stories you can read. But the whole purpose of it is to get you to buy the books on Comixology. So it's like, oh, here's the first issue or two. Oh, you like it? Okay, go buy the other issues for $3.99 each, which is a problem too. I mean, it's hard to justify paying $3.99 for, you know, one issue, 120 something, you know, page issue of a comic book, when the whole reason the comics supposedly cost $3.99 is the print costs have gone up over the years. It doesn't make any sense to me. I'm not paying $4. Well, I have a couple times, depends if I can't get the comic shop, but like $4 for a digital comic book you read in 10 minutes. You can get Shonen Jump for $1.99 a month, and you will never be able to read everything they have on there. So it is kind of a rip. I get you have to pay your creators, but damn. So they're basically saying, you know, you have this article out there and they're saying digital is not the solution. So the solution for a lot of creators right now does seem to be crowdfunding. However, we've got some problems. We've got some problems over there too. Now, Indiegogo has actually been taking off in recent years, and thanks to YouTubers who have been going to Indiegogo, and they've been doing very, very well over there. Indiegogo used to be a D-list crowdfunding site. Like, people didn't go to Indiegogo. They only went to Indiegogo if they couldn't use Kickstarter or didn't want to use Kickstarter for whatever reason. But ever since YouTubers started using Indiegogo, it's just completely, you know, taken off. I mean, you do not see six-figure crowdfunding campaigns like this on Kickstarter anymore. It used to, way back when it started, but you do not see them anymore. And you've got people who have never done comics before ever coming in to Indiegogo and making six figures, you know. But then you've got other people who are like, don't go to Indiegogo, that's where all the Yahtzees go, because they got booted out of Kickstarter, which is a problem. A lot of people are going to be going to Kickstarter. Well, Kickstarter's not doing so hot. Kickstarter's going to be laying people off. New projects on the site dropped off by 35% year over year. People are like, oh, it's because of the pandemic. No, year over year. The pandemic's only been around for like a month and a half. So we're talking since last year, 35% fewer projects. And a big part of that, I mean, it's not all of it, but I think a big part of it is that Kickstarter has been turning away business from people that they don't think align with their community goals, their political goals, because Kickstarter reorganized in 2015 as a public benefit corporation, which gives them the right to basically say, does this project align with our values? Does it align with our values? And if it doesn't, and they're based in San Francisco, and if it doesn't, we're not going to put it on the platform. If we don't like individuals who are trying to crowdfund on our platform, we're going to turn them away. And what happens is, and we're seeing this with Patreon too, where you can turn away certain creators and it doesn't end there. It's a domino effect. When other people see you do that, even if they do not share the same opinion as the person you're turning away, they turn away too, because they're like, the hell with that. You know, how do I know that they're not going to turn on me someday and cut off my money? And that's what happened with Kickstarter. People looked at it and they're like, hell, they can kick you off of Kickstarter for any reason or you know, whatever. So they're going to Indiegogo. Patreon, same thing. Patreon, you know, killed itself by kicking off a lot of people that they thought were too edgy or too far right or whatever the deal was. They kicked Sargon off for saying something on YouTube, which apparently YouTube didn't even find it offensive, but somebody at Patreon did. So they took his funding away. And other people looked at that and they said, this is not right. You shouldn't have the right to go police people around the internet and decide whether or not they're moral enough for your platform. So they pulled their money from Patreon. Again, you don't even have to agree with the people that are leaving these platforms. You just have to look at the example and be like, I don't want anything to do with that. Same with anime artists. There are a lot of artists on Patreon who don't draw lewd anime art, but they saw what Patreon was doing and cracking down on people who drew art, lewd art, and they were like, well, these characters might potentially be underage, so you can't use the platform. And oh, by the way, can we look into your hard drive, your Google Drive, and see if you've got any lewds in there too, even though it has nothing to do with what we're doing. And they pulled out. So now both Patreon and Kickstarter are in deep shit. You know, so that's it. Just take the money. Take the money. Now, I mean, if it's something really egregious you don't want in your platform, that's one thing. But when you've got people that are putting out comic books, like in the case of Richard Meyer, you know, his comic book, there's nothing offensive as comic book. It was a G.I. Joe homage with the big gorilla. And there's nothing wrong with the comic, but because people at Kickstarter didn't like his YouTube channel, they said he wasn't allowed. And because of that, I think this is the beauty of it, because Kickstarter decided to be the moral authority and who could and who could not crowdfund comics, because they thought they were the only game in town. Now Indiegogo is taking all the comic book money. Funny how that works, isn't it? But I think this is going to be the future, and a lot of people want physical copies. I'm actually a big fan of digital comics because we started in web comics, and there is definitely an audience for digital comics. It's just not as large as or at least in dollars. It's not as large in dollars, you know, as it is for physical books. But even heavy metal, because of the pandemic, they're going to be putting out digital comics. So they're going to push digital comics come hell or high water. It just depends on whether or not there's a market for it. And if there's no market for it, you know, it's not going to get very far. But I think there is. I just don't think that they're doing it right over here. I do like the Viz model. I like the all you can eat for one price model. It's just, does it pay for itself? Does it benefit creators? I don't know. But things are going to change. They're not going to look the same on the other side. Marvel, I'm telling you, Marvel and DC, both of them, I think, are on borrowed time. We'll see what the comic book industry looks like in 6 months. We'll talk later. Hey guys, thanks for watching Clownfish TV. Please consider supporting the channel. Go to clownfishsupport.com. That's clownfishsupport.com. And if you want to join our community, go to clownfishtalk.com. That's clownfishtalk.com. Please subscribe, ring the bell for notifications. We will talk to you next time.